I've been thinking about that famous Benjamin Franklin quote, and I quote, "In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes," end quote. You could also add that you can be absolutely certain that our major political parties are very good at arguing about tax and totally not good about doing anything about tax reform. Since March last year, I have been calling for stage 3 tax cuts to be rejigged so that low and middle income earners could get some relief. And that was the right thing to do. If a government or leader gets something wrong, they should fix it. But there are other things that need fixing in our tax system, and it will take real courage. Do we have the courage to do that? Or does the government of the day have the courage to do that? I doubt it. A tax system was written in the 20th century, and that's a problem in itself. I'm not an economist, but most of them will tell you that our tax system isn't match fit for the 21st century, and it certainly wasn't written before COVID came around. Australians want and need better services. That's what our tax system is supposed to pay for, but it's everyday Australians that carry most of that burden. Over the next 10 years, our governments will have to spend a lot more on the NDIS, aged care, defence and our health system. And all this spending pressure will grow as Australians get older and climate change weather events keep getting worse. According to the OECD, Australia is a low taxing nation compared to similar countries. We tax the pay packets of everyday Australians, but we let multinationals dodge millions of dollars of tax every year. Every year. They keep dodging tax. And why wouldn't they? Because the companies throw their hands in the air so they will have to leave. That's what they say, we will have to leave. What a load of rubbish. Why don't you pull aim at their game and say, good, go leave. Go find somewhere else to dig your iron ore. Go on, tell them, go leave. If you don't want to pay your tax here properly, you don't want to support this country, then get out of it. But no one seems to have the courage, both you nationalists, both you major parties, do not have the courage to hold them responsible, to make them pay their fair share. And many Australians out there, millions of them, are getting really sick of this. They've had enough. They're sick of picking up the burden when the multinationals are not. Do you know the government gets more from young Australians out there paying back their HECS than what they do from the oil and gas companies that operate here in this country? That in itself is shameful, that you're prepared to rip our kids off instead of taking from multinationals. But that's where we are today, in 2024. And on top of that, not only is that bad enough, we also give the oil and gas companies, that's right, Australians, $11 billion in subsidies. So we give them subsidies, we don't tax them properly. But don't worry, we'll pick on our young people out there that don't have a big enough voice and don't have enough cash in their pockets, can't make enough political donations. We'll take the money off them. It is frightening. The Australian Tax Office's 8th Corporal Tax Transparency Report looked at over 2,000 companies, and guess what? Yeah, I know Australians, this won't surprise you, but guess what? Over a third of them didn't pay tax at all. They didn't pay tax. But I guess when you're paying no tax, that's an accountant's invoice that is worth paying, isn't it? Oh, yes, it is. And if you're an Australian earning good money, you can access lots of tax discounts like capital gains tax, negative gearing, family trust arrangements, and the list goes on and on and on. These are available to all Australians but are assessed most by older and richer Australians. A substantial review of the tax system by former Treasury boss Ken Henry in 2009 made more than 100 recommendations. But you wouldn't guess it. You wouldn't guess it out there. But guess what? Most of them have not been implemented. That's right. They haven't been implemented. Nothing on you on having independent inquiries, Senate inquiries, House inquiries. Great. You make these recommendations, they go back on the shelf. I wish we could give every dollar away for all those recommendations that are not put back out there and not spoken about again because of the lack of courage in this place. Whenever there is talk of fixing these tax breaks, the media and politicians start talking about winners and losers. Scare campaigns pop up everywhere, especially at election time, and then it deteriorates into nastiness, either about the top end of town or so-called welfare cheats. That's where we're at, the blame game. We have to be adults about this, and we're a long way from it. We're like a bunch of 2-year-olds running around still in the cot. Instead of saying something needs to be fixed, let's fix it. Because that's what a leader does. They fix it. We have to talk about tax reform and we have to act on it. And fixing the stage 3 tax cuts doesn't count as reform. It's not even close. It's not even close. To be grown-ups and make the changes the experts recommend will require political courage, like I've said, and that will mean both major parties leaving their donors and vested interests at the door just for once. Just for once, I ask you to put this country before anything else. If you actually put this country, this nation before your donors and before anything else, my goodness, the leaps and bounds that economically we could make in this country would be astounding, would be absolutely astounding. Here's something the government could fix now. They could fix the dodgy GST deal the Morrison government did with Western Australia in 2018. And I say this to you, Tasmanians especially, because you are set to lose $900 million in GST revenue very shortly. And when this deal was done, the government told Australians that it was because the price of iron ore was expected to fall. Anyway, the price of iron ore didn't fall and prices went up, and now they've stayed up. The Prime Minister at the time, Scott Morrison, promised that other states and territories wouldn't be worse off and would be topped up. This top-up was supposed to cost about $2.3 billion. Guess what it's projected to cost today? $30 billion. Do you think the Labor Party over there is going to top Tasmania up with the money that was taken off by this side over here? I doubt it. Once again, lack of courage. But we'll keep reminding them of the lack of courage as we're going into elections, no doubt. But seriously, that $900 million or more now to come out of Tasmania, whoa. I'll tell you what, the Treasurer has agreed to keep the top-up deal to Tasmania going. That's a good thing. But fixing this dodgy deal would be better. As Sole Eastlake economist and proud Tasmanian told the Sydney Morning Herald, and I quote, the smaller states like Tasmania, South Australia, you're another one, and the Northern Territory are going to face a fiscal cliff when that deal ends, end quote. He also made the excellent point that fixing the GST isn't about numbers, it's about votes. How about that? And I quote, the GST deal isn't Chalmers' fault, but no party is going to abandon it because of the politics in Western Australia. Something is going to have to change because it can't continue, end quote. Once again, I'm just one of millions that knows it doesn't come down to GST. It comes down to whether or not we have power and how many seats we can win. That is not the best interest of the nation. And never will be and never has been. I don't know where we lost that way, to be honest, in both these chambers, that we lost the way to put the nation first. And we have seriously lost our way. We need courage and we need political courage. The courage to talk about tax reform, the courage to listen to the experts, and the courage to reform our tax system so that it's fair. And our young people out there have to stop coughing up most of it, which is shameful, like I've said out in it before. We are supposed to be the land of a fair go. That's part of our values, just a reminder in here. But we don't see that for sure in our own tax system.